Hey there, it's Craig Ancel from the Career Growth Made Easy podcast. We're getting so excited over here because we're approaching episode 100. Whoa, wait a minute, what am I talking about? This is episode 100. To celebrate, we've got some great new things coming out, and one of the special things we're doing for episode 100, we're having a guest on. Please join me to learn more about my guest, digital manager Madison Ancel. Welcome back to the Career Growth Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Craig Ancel, and we're celebrating. There's major excitement going on over here because we're hitting episode 100 today with you. And part of that celebration includes bringing on a guest. And by the way, it's our first guest. I'm honored to bring on Madison Ancel, my daughter, who is also my digital manager. Hey, Madison, how are you?
I'm good, Mr. Boss Man. How are you?
Oh, nothing formal like that, Madison. I'm doing great, thanks. I'm glad you're on the
happy to
show
be
today.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, how has it been working for the man? How has it been? What's your history? What do you feel like sharing today?
Well, I will say I did not know what to expect when it came to working with my dad, but I think it's given me an incredibly unique opportunity to get to know you better as a business person and to get to know you better as a person because I just get to spend more time with you and see a different side of you. And I think it's been a really great opportunity for both of us.
I appreciate that, and I enjoy spending time with you as well. I'd say I think throughout the episodes, we've really stretched ourselves, gone into some, let's say, uncomfortable areas we weren't really familiar with or unsure of, and that in the end, we triumphed and powered through.
Yeah, we had to get creative at times, but I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think after getting me on the team, it became a little easier because there was somebody to bounce ideas off of. And I just feel like there's always been a decent sense of collaboration, which helps when, coming up with content.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. And in the beginning, and we'll talk about when you first came on, but in the beginning, when I was putting the business together, there were just so many avenues to go down, working on the business license, getting the hardware, the right hardware set up, the right software, a website choice, a website provider, social media, which ones to be on, which ones maybe aren't the best for podcasting, getting that SEO, that search engine optimization. There was just so much to do. It can become overwhelming for new business owners. And I was so glad that you had the capabilities, the skills, and the bandwidth to come on and support me and Career Growth Made Easy.
I mean, I certainly don't, I'm not glad that the pandemic happened, but I am of the belief that everything happens for a reason. I like to think that way because it's the only way to kind of be positive about things and move forward. And if it had not been for the pandemic, I don't know if this course would have taken because I was on a different track, but I ended up here with you and I don't regret anything. So I'm happy to be here and for things to take me here. I'm grateful for the opportunity. So.
Absolutely. And I kind of understand what you're saying about the pandemic. No one wishes it had happened, and we're powering through, struggling through it now. But what I think I'm hearing from your message, Madison, is that it's really changed the course of lives for many people, including yours and mine, where we're no longer, things are changing back now, but in the beginning, we were no longer face-to-face, one-on-one in, close social settings. It's become more remote and more distant learning, more distant work.
Yeah, I never imagined this future for myself. Like truly, 2 years ago, you couldn't have told me that I would be doing this, not just for you, but for other people. And now I love what I do. And I'm very happy to have found this path. So, I think if it wasn't for the circumstances and you giving me this opportunity, I don't know where I'd be, but I'm happy to be where I am.
No, and we're happy to have you as well, myself and our listeners. I think along the way of the pandemic, Madison, you also earned a degree through college?
I did. I graduated from the University of Central Florida with a bachelor's degree in entertainment management. So
with entertainment management, I think that's a little bit different than some of the other degrees out there. What were some of the highlights for you that gave you some new skills and some new, abilities?
Well, one of the classes that I had to take was on social media management, which I didn't realize would become such a crucial part of my life. But I'm glad to have taken it because not only was it fun, but it was something that would help me further my career in the future. But there were also, like hotel management. We had to do contract law. There were lots of very different classes that we had to take to kind of make us fully rounded out students and putting us out into the world where the event and entertainment industry didn't end up existing at that moment. So that's kind of where the shift in career came for me because I needed a way to make money now. So
Exactly, understand, because we were talking earlier, the one-on-one and the close the close social proximity changed, right? The fairs, the movie theaters, the concerts went away for quite some time, and with that, the need for people to manage those events. So you've transitioned your life, is what I'm understanding, at least temporarily, from event management to social and digital management, and for me, I'm very thankful, and you've played a crucial part, so thank you.
well, I appreciate it.
I thank you. And I know that there have been a couple episodes that you were interested in talking about, and I'm kind of curious, out of the now 100 episodes, with your help being our first guest, I'm kind of curious which ones resonated with you, or what roles you've played in helping with some of those titles and content.
Well, the first one I wanted to point out was the first one I was hired for. The first episode that went out after I started working with you was episode 19, which I didn't even realize it was so early on, but it was. It was episode 19, Don't Start with an Apology. And I can't believe that I've been here with you for 80 plus episodes. That's just crazy to me.
And I have a social media calendar as well as our podcast editorial calendar you're well familiar with. And I have that up, and it looks like it came out around the time of the COVID outbreak. So it was kind of a episode title stretch for us and for our listeners, just to kind of find ourselves during this time of COVID.
Well, I also know that there was a break where the initial lockdown happened. We did go on a break for a couple of months, understandably so, because, the world was kind of in a situation. But I always found it interesting. I didn't know if the reason that the title was Don't Start with an Apology is because we felt apologetic in taking a break, or because we were going in a direction that was just unrelated and it kind of was a coincidence.
Now, that's a good point you bring up. So many of the times that I share with Career Growth Made Easy and the coaching that I do one-on-one as well as virtually now, that people sometimes start off emails and they start off conversations with, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, or, hey, sorry this is late, but. And that's really part of my message in episode 19. If you haven't heard it, I recommend to go back and listen to it. It's a great show. But that don't start with an apology. Don't weaken your message with the first thing being an apology or possibly an excuse. Just start with your intro and move right into the content.
Yeah, it definitely sets the precedent for how the person is going to receive your information. And I always just thought it must have been, maybe it was an internalized thing for me, but I thought, oh gosh, I feel bad that we haven't been releasing episodes, so I hope that it's all right. But it's completely okay to take a break, and especially in that moment, there was a lot going on at the time, so it makes perfect sense that there weren't episodes going out every single week.
No, and I appreciate that too, right? As you're saying, we did take a pause as far as a podcast release process, normally on Mondays, and there was a pause at a time or two, and it was for good reason. Maybe there's some family matters or personal things going on, as well as what's dealing with the pandemic, but we got back on our feet, and with your help, and we were able to get a consistent rhythm going. So that's kind of what happened with episode 19 going forward.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a rebirth in a way because it was a new company being presented. And I feel like around that time that I came on, we were branching into social media and then looking to redesign the website. So it was kind of like we were entering a new era almost, but it was like an accident. But again, I think everything happens for a reason. So we had that break time to, focus on real life. But when we came back, there was just a lot more to say because so much had been left unspoken.
I agree with that. Hey, so what else are you thinking about for some other episodes that might have touched you or you've, had some interaction with?
Well, I wanted to say, obviously, every topic that you touch on, I'm not familiar with. I will say a lot of it I do have a special connection with because as my father, you've taught me a lot of these things already. Growing up, I had quite the advantage because whenever I was going in for an interview or anything like that when I was young, you were always there ready to give me a mock interview at the dining room table. So I had an edge on the competition. But I will say, episode 56, Winning with Video Interviews, it was that episode and what was going on in our family at the time that introduced me to that concept for the first time. I had no idea that that was a thing.
Well, that's a good point you bring up, episode 56, Winning with Video Interviews. Right, there's a couple different styles, and what we were used to in the past was a phone interview maybe, just to get you kind of queued up and decide if you're in the final batch for in-person interviews, and then some type of in-store interview. I know with the in-store interviews, they might be one-on-one or one-on-many, where you sit down kind of like in a booth and just do a multiple round of discussions with people, but this changed things up with video interviews. I figured, hey, they might be like a Zoom type interview, such as we're doing now, where we're just listening to each other and having a conversation. But you know what? With that 56 episode, it also talked about recorded interviews, and that's without a person on the other side. And that's what really caught me off guard and that I wanted to share with others after doing some interviews with some human resource professionals and some people that had gone through the video interviews. That was the reason why I brought that episode up, to give people a tip.
Yeah, especially since that format hasn't gone away, because in fact, my sister, your daughter, has that same type of interview coming up, and so it's clearly, growing in popularity, or at the very least, it's still here. So I think it's something that people need to learn about, because you don't know when that could happen to you, and it's such a different type of interview than we're used to, because there's no back and forth. So, I think it's a great resource for people to have.
No, thanks for bringing that up, and that's a really good point. So in this particular case, my other daughter had gone into a facility, and she asked for a job application and was interested in filling it out and possibly speaking to someone in management. But it turns out they just directed her to a website with a link to set up a video interview. So for our listeners out there, it's really important. You might get your best dress on, your best attitude, your best clothing, you're ready to rock and roll. You go in with your best face forward, your best foot forward, and guess what happens? They just turn you around right at the door, or after a 30-second discussion, click this link and record a video. You might feel defeated. And I know that can happen because I've been there for other situations where you're looking to have that visionary look ahead, and I can't wait to have that discussion. I can't wait to see the opportunity to work here, and you get turned around almost stone cold. So you have to bring that energy and summon it back when it comes to going home or going to your office, your apartment, or to a classroom possibly to record, or maybe a conference room if you're working in another facility, and summon that courage and energy to have that video interview just as if you were looking at the other person in the room. That's critical.
Yeah, and it's not easy to do, so I think it's great to have tips on that from, as you said, you've spoken to people who have experience in that, so it's great to know, as somebody who's been through it before, what are the things to look out for and how to best proceed.
Absolutely. And, not that everybody that's receiving that's reviewing the recorded video interview is doing this, but imagine if they are your future company, the person reviewing this video interview, imagine that person had worked the full day, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever the matter. They're going to be pretty worn out after having a full day. Maybe this is an extra part of their job that they have to do late at night where they're a little tired. If they're going through a batch of video interviews, hi, my name is Craig, and I really like this job because, doesn't cut it. But if you just flip the switch, and even though you're talking to a computer, liven up. Hi there, my name's Craig, and I'm really passionate about this, and I'd really like to work for company X because that's going to catch that person's eye and their ear. So just think about that. Even though you're recording through a computer just to a blank screen or a few words on the screen, remember, someone's eventually going to review that video interview, and that's what episode 56 focuses on.
Absolutely. And, speaking of looking for jobs and applying for jobs, that's where I wanted to talk about episode 74. Is this job a trick or a treat? This was about red flags that you may find in job postings. Now, this was one of the first episodes that I fully pitched to you. The podcast before this was, mostly your thing, your creative playground, where you were coming up with all the content in all the knowledge that you had, and I really wanted to start helping out and contributing a bit more so that I could get involved on that sort of side of things. And I felt it was a good topic to speak on because it was something I was going through in my life at that moment. I was looking to pick up a second job, and I was on all of the Glassdoor, Indeed, even just Google, Monster, everywhere. And there were so many job postings that just read too good to be true. And I actually got very far in the interview process for one of them, as you know. And I won't get too into it, but, getting to the point where I was speaking with somebody on the phone, everything that they had told me looked nothing like what had been outlined in the job description. And it just totally took me off guard.
Well, and that's a good point you bring up. This is something that rings true personally with you, and I think it's good to advise our listeners on. If something sounds or feels too good to be true, kind of double check it. Do that extra research before applying. Or if you choose to apply, which is fine, just make sure you have the right mindset. Don't be overwhelmed by all the benefits and all the apparent great things that this company or this job's going to bring to you until you get it in writing. Because to your point, is this job a trick or a treat?
I also felt defeated. It was really hard not to feel defeated because when you're applying for jobs, you're already in a bit of a vulnerable state because there's something that you either want to change or that you need to add to your life because you're looking for more money, for more to use your time in a better way, whatever it may be. And so to get farther along in the process and get closer and closer to that, you're hired. I was so excited, and then when the truth kind of came to light, I felt embarrassed for having been bamboozled or whatever. And it's really hard when you're in that moment to not feel really dejected, and it made looking for jobs right after that a little bit difficult because I kind of became paranoid.
No, I can understand that, and thanks for sharing some of your emotions at that time. I'm going to guess, and if hopefully I don't go too deep with this question, and if so, just cut me off. But when that situation happened with that particular potential job, was your first thought fear, or was your first thought defensiveness, or were you kind of embarrassed when it first happened and you started to unravel it? Could you kind of take us through that?
When it first happened, I was kind of in denial. I was like, no, I can make this work. This is okay. This isn't really what I asked for, but I really need a job. I'm not in a position to turn her down. But in reality, I'm in control of the jobs that I select. It's just when you're in a tight spot, you want to kind of lower your standards in a sense because you're like, but is it just taking this job that's a little bit not what I wanted it to be, or is it back to the grindstone, back to the job hunt? And it seemed like picking the lesser of two evils. But in the end, after reflecting and of course talking to you and my mom, I knew that in my gut it just didn't feel right, and I had to take my strength and my professionalism and type up an email that kind of let them down, and I never heard from them again. So clearly, not even like a response email, which leads me to believe they were either not familiar with people turning them down before, or they in turn became kind of embarrassed, and then we just moved on.
No, I understand. And I want to say one thing, though, the word choice you used earlier, you said you let them down. I don't think so. You just gave them notice that you weren't going to, pursue the job or to, sign up for the job. Because if a company makes certain offers, whether it's on social media, their website, or, if you do some type of recorded interview or a video interview, if certain offers are made and you're led to believe one set of circumstances, one set of benefits, and they just totally take a fork in the road and go the 180 on you, the opposite direction, you have the right to say, hey, that's not what I understood, or can you clarify the few following points for me? And if they become frustrated with you, or they kind of try to steer you away from where you're trying to go, that also, I think, is a red flag saying this isn't the right company for me. If I feel this uncomfortable during a potential interview, what's the opportunity for me to feel comfortable when I'm working?
Mm-hmm. And I remember the free download that's kind of attached and that goes with this episode we worked on. And one of the things was talking about how it lists a bunch of benefits, but none of those benefits are related to money. It just talks about, oh, you can get this perk, or you can have this, or, it's such a fun environment, but it doesn't really hammer down a salary, that's a red flag because they're trying to compensate and kind of get you excited about the place, only then to kind of slide you a really low offer, but hope that because of all the glitz and glamour, it's still going to be okay.
That's a really good point too, right? So when we apply for jobs, we should have some type of hourly range or salary range in mind. And the stronger that we interview, the stronger that our resume is, the more likelihood that we're going to be offered the mid to upper part of that pay rate. But if the company is unwilling or unable to do that, and it seems like they talk very little about the pay or salary, and they focus on, to your point, the glitz and glamour, all these special features or bonuses they offer, you have to realize, is that really what I'm looking for? If I join this company that's into promotions and I get a free movie ticket once a week, is that really going to help me? Am I going to use that in lieu of, say, a different pay offer? So you just have to decide what the right benefits are for each of us as we apply for our jobs.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
Yeah. And then, as we moved on in a few episodes, I'll tell you, I shared with some of our listeners that I had some struggles and challenges, not only with some home improvement and repair, but also some of our vehicle repairs. It was quite crazy over a period of time. In fact, I'm still struggling with some of that now, but that's for another show.
Yes, it was certainly just a moment of one breakdown after another. It was crazy, but that's again where the episode comes into play. Episode 92. Pros and cons, being a jack of all trades. Now, in lieu of you wanting to be, self-confident or overly self-confident, I came up with this idea for the podcast because I see all that you're able to do for the house and for us, and I just think this has to be something that other people experience, the potential burnout and the benefits that's associated with kind of being a little good at everything, how that plays into, are you able to, regiment your regular schedule? Are you spreading yourself too thin? And I just felt like there was a lot to go on because you were insulating the house and fixing the cars and you were doing so much. And I was just like, I couldn't believe that you still had time for a full-time job and the podcast and a family. And I just thought, I feel like people could learn from this and also relate to this experience.
I appreciate you mentioning that, and I appreciate your thoughts as well. It was and still is a little bit of a difficult time, and the jack of all trades concept, right? You're a jack of all trades, but master of none. I don't really believe in being an expert. You can be more strongly knowledgeable in one subject over another. I just happen to be blessed and gifted that through the years of research and hands-on training and experiences I've gone through, that I'm able to repair most of our vehicles, whether it comes to the engine, the drivetrain, or even the air conditioning.
And you also love to learn. You love to learn.
Yes, that too is a blessing and a curse. I'll tell you that. There are times where I get so far into a vehicle repair where I had to take my upper part of an engine apart in the last month or so, and I kind of got to a point where I said, "Wow, this is getting out of my comfort zone. Let's take a pause for a moment, take a breather." So I had to go learn, and I did reference on possibly that show 92 or another episode that if you don't have the knowledge that you need, there's no problem in reaching out to your peers or to your network. And worst case, I shouldn't even say worst case, and one idea you could have, if you don't have access to people immediately, possibly due to your communication or your environment, just reach out on your phone or on the web and take a look. We have so many videos out there. Not all of them are going to give you the proper perspective, but they may give you a different perspective.
And you mean we as in like the internet, not us.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So if people aren't available due to the time of day, maybe they're sleeping and you work nights and you're up, whatever the case may be, you can use the internet. There are going to be some videos out there and some things done by backdoor mechanics or backyard mechanics, I guess you could say, they're not as experienced as others. But then there are going to be some that are just going to show a particular situation or a position of the vehicle from a different camera angle that you just haven't experienced, and seeing that single picture, possibly with the flash on, illuminating the background, lets you see maybe a bolt, a nut, a hose, a connection that you weren't aware of that was there hanging up. The progress I was trying to make, remove, say, a valve cover, or to install a valve cover or some type of computer component. And now that I see that with the flash illuminating it, wow, I now realize what's causing that interference. I need to remove that so that I can get to the back of the engine.
Right.
And so those experiences were really important to me.
It just speaks to the resourcefulness and the versatility of a person who's willing to, go the extra mile to find a way to make a repair for free, or save some money. It doesn't make you cheap or anything. It makes you, it's good to have a mindset like that, but it comes at a cost, and it's how far you're willing to go, how far you're willing to, wake up early and go to bed late. I mean, there were times when I would call the house and you would be working on the car at 10 o'clock at night. And to me, I'm like, that can't happen all the time, because there has to be room for, relaxation, let alone the other, to-do list items that you have. And so I just felt like it's something to be celebrated, but it is also something to be wary of.
No, and I appreciate that, and my body appreciates it too, because the nights that were 10 and 11 o'clock, which were infrequent, but there were a few back to back because I had to, get the vehicle back on the road. And as my wife put it, the engine was in 1,000 pieces all over some tables in our garage, in our driveway as I was doing the repairs. So, I got down into the guts of the engine and had to solve some problems, but thankfully I was able to get it back together. Took a little longer than I expected, but I was able to do it safely. The vehicle is leak-free and running well, and thanks to God, had the ability and skills to see it through to the end. So for anybody out there that is a jack of all trades or jack of many trades, there are pros and there are cons, and I talk about those as we discussed in episode 92. But for any of these episodes that Madison and I have talked about and shared, we'd love to hear your comments and your feedback. We're on social media, thanks to Madison's help, or my digital manager. We're at Craig Ancel, at CRAIGANCEL. That's on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we also have recently gone on to YouTube and have the Career Growth Made Easy podcast YouTube channel. So you're welcome to join us for any of those and connect with us. Madison, with regards to digital media management and being my digital manager, what are some of the things that you've been working on, or what are some of the areas that maybe have surprised you with regards to working for me and Career Growth Made Easy podcast and our listeners?
I think that not to sound braggadocious, but
that's a big word, self-serving.
Right, exactly.
I'm not going to spell that. This is career growth, not spelling bee. Yeah.
But I will say it's almost practice makes perfect without realizing it over time. I mean, I look back at some of the graphics that I made for you back in like May of 2020, and I almost cringe, because I'm like, oh my goodness, what did I really think that looked good? But and this is another episode, but it's like, or no, it was you know what others don't. Somebody else knew, and I didn't, how to make those look better than they did. But over time and with experience and getting more of a sense of what your aesthetic was and what you were looking for, because each person is different, right? If I treat you like a client and I have other clients, each person's sense of style is different. What they're hoping to achieve is different. Their audience is different. So that's going to play into how you design things to look and feel like what those members of the audience would be interested in. And so because we've been doing this together, working for like 2 years now, we've gotten into such a groove. I didn't know that like I was capable of designing emails, and hey, join our email list, craigancel.com/email. We've got great emails going out twice a week. They're awesome. I work really hard on them.
Self-plug.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's self-plug, but it's also us plug. But and also, oh my goodness, I don't even know if we have time to get into it, but the master classes, that could be its whole other episode. That was also something I never dreamed that I would be able to accomplish. But that is, those passion projects, that blows me away too, just how we were able to put that all together and those weeks of all that hard work. But I'm very grateful, as I said, to be given the opportunity from you, to see the potential in me as your family member, but also I know you wouldn't hire me if you didn't actually think there was something there too. It's not nepotism or anything.
The Career Growth Made Easy podcast listeners are a very demanding set of people, and they deserve the best. And that's why I
agree.
Yes, and that's why I have Madison Ancel, digital manager, on today. So, Madison, one thing you talked about earlier at the end of this show was the quality or the design type of some of your graphics, and I can't remember the word we came up with, and they were well-serving at the time. You did what what was asked of you and you were creative in your design. But I kind of want to say I called it 8-bit or kind of like
It was like cartoon or something.
cartoon based, yeah. And
Yeah.
we learned a lot from that. But at the time, it served its purpose, and your skills and capabilities grew and blossomed with the needs of the show and with our listeners as we stretched and started moving into webinars. And you brought up the master classes, which we'll probably save for another show if you'd like to be back on. Hint,
Yeah,
hint.
if the listeners want me, I'll come back.
Absolutely. I'm sure we're going to get some very positive feedback on this show, our first guest episode. But no, you've really grown with me and with the needs of Career Growth Made Easy podcast and our listeners, and the graphics for one, the ability to support me with email and copywriting so that we can really craft clean, clear messages to our subscribers. And then also with the social media, right? A lot of it's in the headline, and if you don't capture their attention in the headline, they're very unlikely to look forward or look down. And by the way, since we had talked about career growth as the focus of this podcast, talking about catching attention very, very briefly, not to derail this guest discussion, Madison, but resumes and cover letters, really, really important that regardless if you do these things yourselves, you get help from others, or you have, a third-party company that's not Craig Ancel or Career Growth Made Easy help you. Really important that you capture someone's attention right from the beginning. You have barely 3 seconds with paperwork to catch someone's attention. They won't even read your document. They're scanning it. Is it attractive to the eye? Does it have good white space? Is it framed in a way that would make but trigger in someone's mind, read on? So to your point, Madison, about our graphics, our social media, we've grown together. And with that, we've learned and improved on how to write resumes from scratch, as well as to update them and even remodel them if someone's gone into a different job or a job transition. So
I look at my first resume and I look at the one that I have as my current one, and you couldn't even tell they were made by the same person, because you go through such, and it's a plug, but you go through such a transition when you go through the masterclass, because not only was I there when you were writing the structure of it, but of course, I test ran it. I took it myself before it went out to really put the advice to work and make sure that it was something that is feasible and that actually works and provides a level of change that you feel confident in. And just looking at it's just night and day, honestly, the things that you learn and how all these tips that you didn't even know, and the mistakes you're making that you're not even aware of. It's good stuff. And there's so many episodes on resumes as well in the podcast, and a couple freebies I know on the website, craigancel.com/resources.
I love it. I love it. Preach.
Again, it speaks to the resourcefulness of people who, if you are looking for the information out there and you put the effort into it, you will find it,
No, and that's a really great point. As I'm looking at the time, we were targeting 30 minutes, so Madison will start to wrap up. But you did a really great. I know you were going to say that, because obviously this isn't scripted. This is a great first interview, but you're helping me wrap this up with a really good final 1-2 punch. So, with regards to resources on the internet, the web, your networks, the people that you know, it can take a lot of time to gather that information, and you can't be sure the information that you gathered is valid. A lot of people have advice, including yours truly, but what you're really looking for is something that you feel is wholesome, valuable, and touches you in a way that feels genuine. If you feel someone's pushing information on you too aggressively or assertively, or if they're just, they're looking for what's in it for them to make that final sale, I'd recommend against working with that kind of person or with that kind of company. You're looking for a company that has the heart of a teacher, the heart of a giver. And if you hear that in our show, if you hear that in us, that's the message we're trying to get across. That's why, as Madison mentioned, we have a lot of freebies. I think we're at least at a dozen freebies on our website, and that's located in our resources tab. We do also have some premium coaching classes, one-on-one with me virtually, as well as our master classes, and they are the resume and cover letter master class. But I think we'll save those two discussions for another show. The point is, just if you feel comfortable with whoever you're working with and you feel that they're supporting you and they have your best interests in heart, that's what you're looking for in a genuine teacher, a coach, a mentor.
Well said.
Thank you so much, Madison. Well, I can't believe the time is gone. We've cranked well over 30 minutes, and that was again our target to give our listeners some time to digest our shows in between their outings or possibly traveling to and from work. It's been an absolute blast to have you on, Madison, as our first guest. I hinted at it, and now I'll formally ask you, would you mind coming on again to share some more with us?
If it goes over well and people are liking it, I would be more than happy to come back and talk about many things with you.
Well, I know you'll be back on because I'm sure the episode's going to go over well. And we'd love to hear your feedback, as I mentioned earlier. It's really important that we touch the hearts and souls of our listeners and provide value to them. So in closing, this has been Craig Ancel, your host, with our first-time guest, digital manager, Madison Ancel, my daughter. We're so thankful. Oh, and who's that, Madison?
And my cat, Lucky.
Oh, and Cat Lucky is happy to be here too as we close. We are so thankful to be able to get to episode 100, and it's through your gracious listening support that we can do this. Please pop onto social media at Craig Ancel, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, or you can go to YouTube for Career Growth Made Easy podcast channel. We'd love to hear your feedback and celebrate with us. We have some really great things in store going past episode 100, where I think we're really going to keep you on the edge of your seat, and you should really make sure you're subscribed and visit our website too, because if you're on our email subscriber list, you occasionally get some bonuses and freebies that nobody else does. So with all that said, it's been a blessing to be your host, Craig Ancel of the Career Growth Made Easy podcast, finishing episode 100. Madison, once again, thank you for being on and our first guest. What an honor for me.
And for me.
Awesome. We'll close the show. God bless everyone. Bye-bye. See you later, Madison.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel. New episodes every Monday. In the meantime, why don't you follow us on social media at Craig Ancel on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. To book a coaching appointment, download our free guides, or join our email list, check out the links in the description below.